I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to share my life story in such a public way, but here I am, trying to make sense of the mess my life has become. It all started when my wife, Sarah, and I found out we were expecting our first child. I remember the excitement mixed with a bit of fear. Could we really handle this? But I was all in. We planned everything from baby names to nursery colors, and I thought we were on the same page. Little did I know that beneath the surface of our seemingly perfect life, a storm was brewing. In the months leading up to the birth, things started to feel off. Sarah was distant, often preoccupied with her phone, and she'd laugh at things that I couldn't quite understand. I brushed it off as pregnancy hormones or the stress of impending motherhood, but the unease nagged at me like an itch I couldn't scratch. Late-night text messages, unexplained absences, and her sudden need for privacy made me feel like I was losing her. I tried to talk to her about it, but she'd just roll her eyes, brush my concerns aside, and tell me I was being ridiculous. "It's just stress, honey. You know how it is," she'd say, flashing that bitchy smile that used to charm me but now felt like a mask hiding something darker. Then came the day that shattered my world. It was a Thursday, and I had taken a half day off work to get some things done around the house. I thought I'd surprise Sarah with a nice dinner and finish setting up the nursery. As I pulled into the driveway, I noticed her car was home. It wasn't unusual, but in my gut, something felt wrong. I walked inside, expecting to find her in the kitchen, maybe cooking or preparing for a relaxing evening together. Instead, I was greeted by the sound of hushed voices coming from the living room. I tiptoed closer, my heart racing. As I peered around the corner, I saw Sarah on the couch, her legs draped over the midwife, a woman named Jessica whom we had hired for a home birth. They were laughing, and Jessica's hand was resting on Sarah's thigh. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I stood frozen, my mind racing as I processed what I was seeing. I had walked in on my wife in a way that no husband should ever have to witness. I didn't know what to do. Part of me wanted to storm in there, confront them, and demand answers. Another part of me felt like I was in a nightmare just hoping to wake up, but I knew I had to face this head-on. I cleared my throat loudly to announce my presence, and the two of them jumped apart, eyes wide. The laughter ceased, and in that moment everything shifted. "What the hell is going on here?" I demanded, my voice shaky but firm. Sarah's face turned from shock to outright panic, while Jessica scrambled to get off the couch, looking like she had been caught with her hand in the cookie jar. It's not what it looks like," Sarah stammered, but there was no way to spin this. I felt the anger boiling inside me, mixed with disbelief and deep, gut-wrenching betrayal. I needed answers, and I needed them now. "Then tell me what it is, Sarah. Because it looks like you're having some fun with our midwife, while I'm supposed to be at work." My words came out more forcefully than I intended. The silence that followed was deafening, punctuated only by the sound of my heart pounding in my ears. Sarah opened her mouth to speak, but I wasn't ready to listen. I was desperate for clarity, for an explanation that would somehow make sense of the chaos around me. She eventually started talking, trying to convince me that it was just a misunderstanding, that nothing had happened beyond the affection I had just witnessed. But the excuses felt hollow and rehearsed, each one a feeble attempt to cover up a betrayal that cut deeper than any knife ever could. The emotional turmoil was overwhelming. I went from shocked to furious to utterly heartbroken within moments. I felt like I was teetering on the edge of a cliff, about to fall into an abyss of despair. How could she do this to me? How could she lie to my face while I was trying to be the best husband and soon-to-be father? It felt like the ground had been ripped from beneath my feet, leaving me flailing, gasping for air. As I stood there, caught in this emotional whirlwind, I realized that this wasn't just about the infidelity. It was about the trust that had been shattered, the love that felt tainted, and the family we were supposed to be building together. I didn't know what would happen next, but one thing was clear. This was just the beginning of a long and painful journey toward understanding what had happened and how to move forward. The confrontation felt like a tidal wave crashing down on me, and the aftershocks lingered long after the initial impact. Sarah stumbled through her excuses, each one more absurd than the last. "I swear it was just a one-time thing," she blurted out, her voice trembling. We were just having a moment. I didn't mean for it to happen. Having a moment, I echoed, incredulous. Is that what you call it? You're sleeping with the woman who's supposed to help deliver our baby and you think that's just a moment. My anger boiled over, mingled with a sense of deep betrayal. I couldn't believe she was still trying to downplay it, as if I was the one being unreasonable. Jessica had retreated to the corner of the room, clearly unsure of what to do. I shot a glare in her direction and she quickly averted her gaze, possibly regretting the entire situation. I turned my focus back to Sarah, who looked like she was about to crumble under the weight of her lies. You were supposed to be my partner, Sarah, I shouted, my voice rising in pitch. We were supposed to go through this together, and now you've destroyed everything with a single poor choice. The hurt I felt was palpable, knotting itself tightly in my stomach. I wanted to scream and cry, but I was also too angry to let tears fall. She launched into a desperate appeal for understanding, claiming she felt neglected during her pregnancy. You've been so busy with work. I felt alone, Jake. I thought you didn't care anymore. The blame game was in full swing and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. How could she turn this around on me? I'm doing everything I can for us. I shot back, feeling my frustration spill over. You think I'm not excited about this baby? I've been working extra hours to prepare for our future, and while I was at work, you were here with her betraying me. The silence that followed was unbearable. Sarah's expression shifted from anger to guilt, her eyes glistening as she realized how far she had crossed a line. I'm sorry, I messed up, okay? She exclaimed, her voice breaking. I just felt so overwhelmed, and Jessica, she was there for me when you were. My heart sank. I was furious, but I also felt a strange sense of pity for her. The reality that my wife was breaking down before me shattered any semblance of anger I felt. Yet I couldn't let sympathy cloud my judgment. I had to keep my head clear. I had to figure out what came next. Is this really who you are? Is this how you handle things? I asked, my voice steadier now but still filled with disbelief. By sleeping with the midwife. This isn't just a fling. This is a fundamental betrayal of everything we built together. I wanted to reach out and shake her to make her understand the magnitude of her actions, but I felt paralyzed instead. She fell silent, tears streaming down her face, and for a moment I almost felt sorry for her. But then reality crashed back in and I remembered the scene I had walked in on, the laughter, the intimacy, everything that had been stolen from me in that moment. I couldn't get past it. The trust that had been the foundation of our relationship was gone and it felt irreparable. I need time to think, I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. I can't just forgive this. I don't even know what I want anymore. I turned to leave the room, wanting to put as much distance between us as possible. I felt like I was suffocating. In the following days, I went through a whirlwind of emotions that shifted like sand beneath my feet. I moved into the spare room, not because I wanted to, but because it felt necessary. I needed space to process everything. Each night, I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying the moment I discovered the truth over and over in my head. How did we get to this point? I reached out to my brother, Mike. I didn't want to burden him with my problems, but I needed someone to talk to. Jake, you have to look out for yourself first, he said, his voice calm and steady on the other end of the line. You can't let her make you feel guilty for wanting the truth. You deserve better. His words resonated with me. I had to be honest with myself about how this affair had made me feel, betrayed, humiliated, and lost. But there was another emotion lurking beneath the surface, the seed of revenge. It wasn't fair for her to get away with this, to tear apart the life we had built together without consequence. I spent hours thinking about what I could do, how I could make her understand the pain she had inflicted on me. But more than that, I wanted her to feel the same heartache I felt every moment of every day since the betrayal. It was a dark road I was headed down, but part of me craved that release, that satisfaction of making her feel even a fraction of what I was going through. As days turned into nights, I resolved to create a plan, a way to make her understand that actions have consequences. I wanted to confront her with the truth, not just of her infidelity, but of how her choices had shattered our lives. I didn't know exactly how I would do it yet, but I was determined to make her feel the weight of her betrayal. After all, I was the one left to pick up the pieces. As the days dragged on, I found myself trapped in a cycle of anger and sadness. I couldn't seem to shake off the betrayal that had seeped into every corner of my life. I felt like I was living in a fog, going through the motions of daily life while my insides twisted in turmoil. The sight of Sarah, once my partner and confidant, now filled me with a mixture of hatred and pity. I spent hours planning my revenge, crafting scenarios in my head that ranged from the clever to the downright petty. Part of me wanted to confront her with cold, hard facts, corner her into admitting her guilt with undeniable proof. I thought about documenting every conversation, every text message, and every betrayal. I wanted her to see the damage she had done. But the revenge I cooked up in my head was only half the battle. I needed to figure out how to execute it. One evening, while Sarah was out for a walk, a flimsy excuse that she had used too many times, I dug into her phone. I knew it was crossing a line, but the need for clarity drove me. I had already taken a mental note of the changes in her behavior, the late-night texts, the secretive phone calls, and the unexplained absences. I was desperate for answers, and if this was the only way to find them, so be it. Her phone passcode was a simple birthday, my birthday no less. I felt a wave of anger wash over me as I unlocked her phone, the very device that had been a tool for her betrayal. I scrolled through her messages, my heart racing, each notification feeling like a dagger. There it was, a conversation with Jessica, filled with intimate details and casual flirting that made my skin crawl. "I miss you," Sarah had written. "I can't wait to see you again." And Jessica replied, "It was so nice to see you, babe. I'm always here for you." Each message was a betrayal layered over another, and with each line I read, I felt the anger I had been suppressing rise to the surface. I needed to act. I needed to make her feel the weight of her actions. This wasn't just an affair, it was a complete disregard for our life together. I decided to confront her, but not in a way that she would expect. I wanted to set the stage, create a situation where she would have to face the consequences of her choices. I planned a dinner, a facade of normalcy where we could talk, but I would slip in the evidence of her betrayal like an uninvited guest. The night of the dinner arrived, and I went through the motions of cooking her favorite meal, chicken parmesan complete with garlic bread and a side salad. I poured a glass of her favorite wine, trying my best to mask the tension that filled the air. When Sarah walked in, she seemed oblivious, her usual upbeat demeanor in full force. "Wow, it smells great in here," she exclaimed, a smile lighting up her face. I managed a tight-lipped smile in return. If only she knew the storm brewing beneath my calm exterior. We sat down to eat, and I tried to engage in small talk, but my mind was racing. As she talked about work and the baby's nursery, I kept my focus on the task at hand. It was time to make my move. "Sarah, can we talk about something serious?" I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil in my heart. Her expression faltered and she nodded slowly. "What's wrong?" she asked, trying to maintain that same cheerful facade. "I think we need to address some of the issues between us," I replied, my heart pounding. "Specifically, the fact that you've been seeing Jessica." The color drained from her face and the fork she was holding clattered onto her plate. "What are you talking about?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Don't play innocent with me, Sarah. I have the messages." I pulled out my phone, holding it up like a trophy. "Should I read them, or do you want to explain what's been going on?" Her eyes widened, a mix of fear and defiance flooding her expression. "Jake, please, you don't understand. It was a mistake. I never meant for it to go this far," she pleaded, her composure unraveling. "I think you did mean for it to go this far," I shot back, my voice rising. "You've made a choice, Sarah. You chose to betray me, to betray us, and now you're trying to spin it into something I should understand." The confrontation spiraled into chaos. Sarah cried, begged for forgiveness, and tried to justify her actions. "You don't know how lonely I felt. You were always working and I needed someone to talk to. Jessica was there for me. Is that how you repay me? By sleeping with her?" I countered, my anger flaring again. "You didn't even have the decency to come to me and talk about how you felt. Instead, you chose to sneak around like a coward." Her sobs filled the room, and I felt a wave of conflicting emotions. Part of me wanted to comfort her, the part that had once loved her deeply. But the other part, the part that was wounded and angry, refused to let that happen. I had to stand my ground. "I can't just forgive this," I said, my voice quieter but no less firm. "This isn't something that can just be swept under the rug. You've shattered my trust, and I don't know how we can move forward from this." The fallout from the confrontation left us in a state of limbo. I could see that she was genuinely heartbroken and perhaps even remorseful, but the damage was done. I felt like I was on a tightrope, balancing between wanting to salvage our marriage and needing to protect myself from further betrayal. The night ended with Sarah sobbing on the couch while I moved to the spare room, her cries echoing in my ears. I felt an odd mix of satisfaction and heartbreak. The revenge I had craved had come to fruition, yet it left me feeling hollow. I had exposed her lies, but it didn't bring me the closure I had hoped for. Instead, I was left with the daunting question of what would come next. Would we try to rebuild, or was this the end of everything we had once cherished? The uncertainty loomed large, and I knew I had to figure out my next steps carefully. The days that followed the confrontation were a blur of confusion and heartbreak. The atmosphere in our once happy home had shifted dramatically. It felt like living in a war zone where every word was a potential grenade. Sarah tried to reach out to me, offering tears and apologies, but all I felt was a dull ache in my chest, a reminder of the betrayal that had shattered my world. I moved through each day in a daze, caught between anger and sorrow. I wanted to rebuild my life, but I also couldn't shake the feeling that I was standing on shifting sand. Sarah had once been my partner in everything. Now she felt like a stranger. I found myself questioning everything we had built together. Was it all just a facade? How much of our life was real and how much had been tainted by her lies? In the weeks that followed, my brother Mike became my lifeline. I'd call him after work, unloading my thoughts and feelings. He was a sounding board, a voice of reason in the chaos. "You need to think about what you want, Jake. Do you want to salvage this or do you need to move on?" he asked one evening, his tone steady and thoughtful. I didn't have an answer. Part of me wanted to fight for our marriage, to believe that we could get through this together. But another part of me screamed to run, to escape this painful cycle of betrayal and hurt. I was torn, constantly wrestling with the memories of our happy moments and the horrifying reality of her infidelity. Sarah was desperate to make things right. She started attending couples therapy, hoping it would help us find a path forward. I went along reluctantly, unsure if I was ready to face the raw emotions that were bound to surface. First session was awkward, filled with nervous laughter and forced smiles. The therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Roberts, encouraged us to communicate openly, but I found it hard to even look at Sarah. "Why did you choose to go down that path?" I finally asked during the session, my voice calm but laced with hurt. "What was so broken in our marriage that you felt you had to seek comfort elsewhere?" Sarah's eyes filled with tears as she struggled to articulate her feelings. "I felt lonely, Jake. I thought you didn't care anymore. I felt like I was losing myself in the pregnancy, and Jessica was there to listen. I didn't think it would go that far." Her voice cracked as she confessed, her vulnerability sparking a flicker of sympathy within me. Yet I couldn't shake the anger that pulsed beneath the surface. "But you knew what you were doing was wrong. You could have come to me. You chose to betray me instead." Dr. Roberts intervened, encouraging us to focus on healing instead of rehashing old wounds. I appreciated her efforts, but the sessions felt like temporary band-aids on a gaping wound. With each passing day, my resentment towards Sarah felt like a heavy backpack I carried everywhere. I wanted to set it down but felt compelled to carry it with me. As the therapy sessions continued, I tried to open myself up to the idea of forgiveness. I learned about vulnerability, about how it can be a strength, not a weakness. But every time I thought about taking a step toward reconciliation, I was met with the haunting image of Sarah with Jessica, the laughter, the intimacy, the betrayal. One Friday evening, as I sat in our living room alone, a wave of frustration washed over me. I felt like I was on a merry-go-round, dizzy from going in circles. I needed a break, a way to clear my mind. I decided to reach out to a friend, a former colleague named Alex, who had always been good at providing a fresh perspective. We met at a local bar, and for a couple of hours I was able to step away from my problems and just breathe. I shared my story, the betrayal, and the chaos that followed. Alex listened intently, nodding along as I spoke. "You're dealing with a lot, man," he said. "It's okay to feel angry and hurt. But at some point you need to decide what you want for yourself." His words resonated with me. I realized that I had been so focused on Sarah's actions that I'd neglected my own needs and desires. "What do you want, Jake?" I mumbled to myself, the question echoing in my mind. The clarity began to settle in. I needed to take control of my life again. That weekend, I made an important decision. I would take a break from therapy and give myself some space to reflect on what I wanted. I needed to reconnect with myself, to understand how I truly felt about Sarah and our marriage. I packed a bag telling Sarah I was going to visit Mike for a few days. "Are you sure that's a good idea?" she asked, concern etched across her face. "I want to work on things, Jake. I just need some time, Sarah. I can't keep going in circles right now," I replied, trying to reassure her while also setting boundaries. I could see the worry in her eyes, but I knew I needed to step away to get some clarity on the chaos that had taken over my life. Drive to my brother's place was cathartic. As the miles rolled by, I felt a sense of freedom. I could breathe again, away from the tension of our home and the weight of Sarah's betrayal. The weekend was filled with late-night talks with Mike, laughter over beers, and a chance to remember who I was outside of the pain. I reflected on our relationship, the good times we shared, the laughter, the joy of planning for our baby, the dreams we had for our future. Those moments didn't simply vanish because of her choices, but they felt tainted now, overshadowed by the betrayal that had disrupted our lives. By the end of the weekend, I had reached a realization. I had to prioritize my own healing first. If a future with Sarah was to happen, it had to be built on a foundation of honesty and trust, not just band-aids over wounds. I needed to decide if I could ever truly forgive her, or if it was time for me to walk away for good. As I drove home, I felt a sense of determination settle within me. It was time to face the reality of our relationship head-on and make a choice that would ultimately define my life moving forward. Returning home after the weekend felt surreal. I had spent those days away from the chaos, gaining clarity and perspective, yet stepping back into our house brought everything crashing back down. The silence was deafening as I walked through the front door, and I felt the weight of the decisions ahead of me pressing down. Sarah was waiting for me in the living room, a look of concern etched on her face. "I missed you," she said softly, standing up to approach me. I noticed the way her eyes searched mine, looking for something: hope, forgiveness, maybe even love. "I needed some time to think," I replied, my voice steady but distant. I could see the disappointment flicker across her expression, but I quickly steeled myself against it. I wasn't here to comfort her. I had to be honest with myself first. "I understand. I want to make this work, Jake." Her voice trembled as she spoke, and I could hear the vulnerability seep through her words. But the more she pleaded, the more I felt that familiar anger bubbling beneath the surface. "Do you really understand?" I asked, my tone sharper than I intended. "Because I don't think you do. You keep saying you want to make things work, but what does that even mean after what you've done? How can we go back to what we had when you broke my trust?" She lowered her gaze, shame washing over her features. "I know I messed up. I'm trying to show you that I'm willing to do anything to fix this," she said, voice trembling. "I love you, Jake. I don't want to lose you." It struck me how much I wanted to believe her, how desperately I craved the comfort of our previous life. But I also knew that those words were just that, words. They didn't erase the hurt or the betrayal. I needed to face the truth head-on. "I can't just forget what happened, Sarah. I have to be honest about how I feel, and right now I feel lost. I'm angry, hurt, and confused. I need to understand if I can ever forgive you or if I'm just wasting my time," I stated, my heart racing. The air between us felt charged, thick with unspoken emotions. She nodded, tears pooling in her eyes. "I get it. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I'll go to counseling individually. I'll be open with my phone and my life, whatever you need to feel secure again. Just please don't give up on us yet." Her desperation tugged at my heart. It was hard to see her like this, to witness the fallout of her actions and the pain it caused us both. But I also knew that I couldn't be the one to carry the burden of our relationship alone. I think we need to take a step back from each other, I said finally, the words feeling heavy on my tongue. I need to figure out if I can trust you again, if I can forgive you, but I can't do that if things remain the same. Sarah's face fell and I could see the reality of my words sink in. Are you saying you want to separate? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I don't know what I'm saying, I admitted, frustration building within me. All I know is that I can't keep living with this pain every day, pretending everything is fine when it's not. I need time to think, to reflect on what I want. Maybe we both do. I could see the tears spill down her cheeks and I felt a pang of guilt. I knew she was hurting, but I also felt a strange sense of relief in setting boundaries. I'll stay in the spare room for now, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Let's give ourselves some space to think. The days that followed were agonizing. The house felt empty, filled with memories but devoid of warmth. Every night I lay in the spare room, staring at the ceiling, wrestling with the emotions that swirled within me. I had set boundaries, but now I felt a sense of isolation that left me yearning for the connection we used to share. I began seeing a therapist myself, hoping to gain clarity on my feelings. In our sessions, I explored the depth of my anger and sadness, trying to unpack the layers of betrayal. One evening, I voiced my fears. What if I can't forgive her? What if this is the end of our story? My therapist encouraged me to explore the concept of forgiveness, not as a way to absolve Sarah of her wrongdoing, but as a means of freeing myself from the pain. Forgiveness is a journey, not a destination, she explained. It's about understanding your own feelings and finding peace, regardless of what happens in your relationship. As the weeks turned into months, I continued to navigate this complex landscape of emotions. I had moments where I wanted to reach out to Sarah, to find solace in her arms, but those moments were always met with a wave of anger and betrayal. I couldn't shake the memories of her laughter with Jessica, the betrayal that had shattered my trust. One evening, after another therapy session, I returned home to find Sarah sitting on the couch, looking lost and vulnerable. Can we talk? She asked, her voice small. I hesitated but nodded, taking a seat across from her. The tension hung heavy in the air. I've been thinking a lot, she began, her voice trembling. I know I've messed everything up and I've been trying to be better. I want to show you that I can be the wife you deserve. I studied her face, searching for signs of sincerity. What does that mean, Sarah? What does being better look like? I'm committed to this, to us. I'll go to therapy, I'll be transparent about everything, and I'll do whatever it takes to earn your trust back, she said, her eyes pleading. I just need you to tell me what you need from me. I felt a flicker of hope, but I quickly pushed it aside. I need to know if you're really committed to changing. This isn't just about saying the right things, it's about real action. I won't accept anything less, I replied, my voice firm. I promise I'll do the work, Jake. I don't want to lose you, she said, and for the first time I saw a glimmer of the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman who had been replaced by insecurity and betrayal. As we sat there in silence, I realized that while the road ahead would be long and filled with challenges, there was a part of me that still wanted to believe in the possibility of redemption. I had to trust my instincts but remain cautious. I pondered the idea of forgiveness, and for the first time I felt a small sense of hope. Perhaps our story wasn't over yet, but it was going to take time, patience, and genuine effort from both of us to navigate the murky waters we found ourselves in. I understood that rebuilding trust wouldn't happen overnight, but I was willing to give it a chance if Sarah was too. It was time to move forward, but we had to do it together, step by step. The weeks turned into months as Sarah and I embarked on our tentative journey of rebuilding our relationship. Each day began with uncertainty, but there was also a small flicker of hope that buzzed between us. We attended couples therapy together, and I started seeing a therapist individually, determined to sort through my emotions and learn how to forgive, not just Sarah, but myself too. During our therapy sessions, I watched as Sarah transformed before my eyes. She was committed to the process, actively seeking to understand her feelings and the reasons behind her actions. Together, we tackled the uncomfortable truths that had once driven a wedge between us. We talked about our individual struggles, the challenges of impending parenthood, and the loneliness that had crept into our marriage. It was painful to revisit those moments, but I could see the determination in her eyes. There were days when the weight of her betrayal felt suffocating, moments when I could feel anger bubbling up inside me like a volcano ready to erupt. In those moments, I would remind myself of the progress we were making. I focused on the small victories, like the way we could now have an open dialogue about our feelings without resorting to blame. We started having date nights again, albeit in a different way than before. We would cook together, laughing over burnt dinners and spilled wine, slowly rediscovering the joy that had once defined our relationship. One Saturday afternoon, we decided to take a walk through a nearby park. The sun was shining, and the air was filled with the scent of blooming flowers. We strolled hand in hand, feeling the warmth of the sun on our skin, and for the first time in a long while, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. It was as if we were forging a new path together, one that acknowledged the pain while still allowing us to move forward. As we walked, Sarah turned to me, her voice soft and sincere. "I know I've caused you so much pain, Jake. I can't change the past, but I want to create a better future for us. I'm committed to being the partner you deserve." I paused, taking in her words. "I appreciate that, Sarah. It's not easy to forgive, and I'm still working through my feelings, but I can see the effort you're putting in," I replied, my voice steady. "It means a lot to me." Our conversations became more honest, more intimate, and I found myself slowly lowering my defenses. There were still moments of doubt, whispers of insecurity that crept in when I least expected them. But instead of letting them fester, I learned to voice them, to share my fears. Sarah would listen, validating my emotions without becoming defensive. We were building a new foundation based on honesty and understanding, and with that came a sense of healing. One evening, during a particularly emotional therapy session, I found myself at a crossroads. As I sat there, I shared my fears about becoming a father. What if I'm not ready? What if I can't handle the responsibility? I don't want to bring a child into a fractured home. The words tumbled out raw and unfiltered. Sarah reached for my hand, her eyes shimmering with empathy. "We're in this together, Jake. We can lean on each other and figure it out as we go along. I believe in us," she said, her voice steady. In that moment, I realized that while I still had a long way to go, the willingness to communicate openly and honestly was key to our progress. As the months passed, I started to feel a shift within myself. I discovered a sense of resilience I didn't know I possessed. I was learning to set boundaries, to advocate for my needs while being open to the possibility of forgiveness. I also realized that forgiveness wasn't just a gift I could give Sarah. It was a gift I needed to give myself. It was about letting go of the anger that had consumed me, about finding peace amid the chaos. Finally, the day arrived when we welcomed our baby into the world, a beautiful, squirming little girl with bright eyes that seemed to hold a world of promise. As I held her for the first time, everything shifted again. I looked at Sarah, and for the first time since the affair, I saw not just the woman who had betrayed me, but the mother of our child, a partner who was fighting to rebuild what had been lost. In that moment, I felt a swell of emotions: fear, love, hope. I realized that this new chapter of our lives wouldn't be without its challenges, but it was an opportunity for us to grow together. After everything we had been through, we were still standing, still committed to each other and our family. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I began to understand that the journey to forgiveness and healing was ongoing. It would take time, patience, and effort from both of us, but I was willing to embrace the uncertainty. We were working to navigate our new reality, learning to love and support each other in ways we hadn't before. Looking back, I realized that my experience of betrayal had been a catalyst for growth. It forced me to confront my fears, to advocate for myself, and to understand the importance of communication in a relationship. I learned that love isn't just about the good times. It's also about weathering the storms together and coming out stronger on the other side. For anyone facing similar struggles, I would say this: healing takes time, and it's okay to feel angry or hurt. Allow yourself to feel those emotions, but also be open to the idea of forgiveness, both for yourself and your partner. It won't be easy, but with commitment and effort, it is possible to rebuild what was lost. Our story isn't perfect, but it's ours. And as we navigate this new chapter as parents, I know that together we can create a future filled with love, trust, and understanding. In the end, it's about choosing each other every day despite the challenges. That's the real journey.